I just got Cutech's new benchtop jointer. I'll do a complete review, how it performs, features and functions, adjustability. Let's dive in. I'm going to start by edge joining a couple pieces of cedar that I want to glue up for a project that I'm working on. Adjusting the depth of cut is pretty straightforward. It's an easy to read depth indicator. It just takes a second to lock it down and ready to use. I'm just making use of one of the two push blocks that came with the jointer to keep it flush up against the fence. And right away, I notice how solid this fence is compared to my previous jointer. Here's a shot of my previous jointer, how the fence would tend to flex as you applied pressure to it. This new design has additional fence support brackets. It's a much needed upgrade on these benchtop jointers. I run both pieces of cedar through a few shallow passes each, and the result is a really nice clean edge. So I'm just going to set them up here with some light behind them. It looks like a really tight joint. As expected, I guess. It's a jointer. The fence has a lot of adjustability. If you want to make cuts other than 90 degrees, it's pretty easy to adjust it to about any angle up to 45 degrees. There's no angle indicator on the fence, so I'm just using an angle finder to get it set. And it's nice to have a stop that you can trust when returning it back to 90 degrees. I did have to calibrate this stop as part of the initial assembly of the fence, which took a bit of attention to detail to get the whole thing together straight and square, but after this one-time assembly, it's staying pretty true. And overall, the fence supports seem a little light and flimsy and doesn't instill a lot of confidence in being able to keep the fence square. However, I frequently check it to see if it's still square after I move it, and it's only square every time. So the cheap look of the fence mounts is a bit deceiving because it's actually pretty solid and predictable. The fence knobs are a little clumsy and kind of get in the way of each other, and sometimes you have to make use of the spring-loaded lock levers to reposition the handle. In the past, I've frequently moved my fence around just to distribute the wear on the cutters. However, with the way these new fence support brackets work, they really only provide the extra support if the fence is in the one position. I might need to rethink my fence positioning strategy. So I have this piece of rough sawn pecan that isn't really flat on either side. Having the 10-inch wide table is really nice. Cutech actually has a version of this same jointer that's 12 inches wide. Would be even nicer. Maybe I should have gotten that one. I have the depth of cut set pretty shallow, so it takes quite a few passes. I like using this push block with the lip on the end of it to help push the wood through. I think it's a little better for this purpose than the push blocks that came with the jointer. I'll leave a link in the description for this one that I bought online. So pecan is like about the hardest US domestic wood there is, and this jointer cut through it like it was butter, and a really clean cut and of course flat surface. These cutters are pretty easy to move or replace if one gets damaged. They have two sides so you can rotate them once if needed, and then if and when the second side gets worn or damaged, then replace it. But I don't really expect that to happen very often or ever. This jointer comes with carbide cutters, which are pretty durable. Some might like high-speed steel because the idea they might be a little sharper when they're new, but they dull pretty quickly and need to be replaced often. Carbide will stay sharper for much longer and rarely need to be replaced, and is my preference. There are other benchtop jointers that have cutters with 4 sides, and some may say 4 is better than 2, but I don't know. The explanation that Cutech gives for the two-sided design is that the 90-degree non-cutting edge is designed to keep the cutter insert from skewing. And although I don't have any personal experience with the 4-sided cutters, it does seem concerning to me that having a cutting edge, perhaps one that's used, worn, or damaged, as the reference point to keep the insert straight could be problematic. But what I do know is that I've been using this two-sided carbide cutter design in jointers and planers for many years, and I rarely need to replace a cutter, and even if I do, they're very affordable. The cutter head is a spiral configuration with 20 straight blades, each one a ½ inch long. It's pretty much the same cutter head that's in a lot of these benchtop jointers. If you've been looking at benchtop joiner options, likely you've noticed there are a lot of different brands out there that appear to be essentially identical designs. And they're all made in Taiwan by the same OEM manufacturer, Shinmax. Cutech is the only brand which is owned directly by the manufacturer, which they claim gives a bit of a technical support advantage. And also I've noticed Cutech tends to release new features maybe a year or two in advance of those same features becoming available on the other brands. Here's a side-by-side look to this new Cutech joiner to the older model WEN joiner that it's replacing in my wood shop. The longer and more stable fence is the most notable upgrade, as well as a more powerful 12-amp motor compared to the WEN 10-amp motor. And they've also improved the structure by adding some additional horizontal support rods. And this Cutech has a 10-inch cast iron top, whereas this WEN has an 8-inch aluminum top. Note that Cutech did send me this joiner and asked for my review, but I have no obligation to say anything good or bad, and all of the commentary in this video is completely my own unbiased perspective. When I first set up the joiner, I did run a partial cut test just to see how well the outfeed table is adjusted, and it looks pretty good. Also, just setting a straight edge on the outfeed table, you can see the blade tips just touching but not lifting the straight edge. So it's properly adjusted right out of the box, no table adjustments needed. But if you do need to adjust the outfeed table, here's how to do it. You first remove 4 screws in the tabletop to access the table height adjustments that are below these screws. So then you can just use a straight blade screwdriver to adjust the table height. With 4 separate adjustment points, you just need to make sure that the front 2 adjustments are level to the blade tips, and then the back 2 adjustments to get the outfeed table coplanar with the infeed table. It's not the easiest adjustment to make, and it's a good thing it was spot on right out of the box, and I'll probably never need to mess with it. The dust collection port is 4 inches, and it has an adapter to 2.5 inches that I use. I have it plumbed into my workbench dust collection system, and it works pretty well. My joiner's mounted on a pull-out shelf under my workbench, and yet it still operates pretty smoothly with really no noticeable vibrations. I'd say it's a fairly well-balanced joiner. With the pull-out table extensions, there's a total of 54 inches of combined infeed and outfeed, and the extensions are pretty well aligned with the table height. And if they do somehow get out of alignment, there's a way to adjust them. So it'll handle some pretty decent sized work pieces. Maybe not ideal as a large freestanding joiner, but good for a small wood shop like mine with limited space. Thanks so much for watching, and if you think I've earned it, it'd be great if you hit that thumbs up like button and consider subscribing.